Good evening, everyone. I'm just going to talk a bit about our efforts over the past several years at the Canadian Concussion Centre. And Heather Sloman is also going to join me just towards the end. So just to provide a bit of context, we know that concussion disorders include the transient effects of a single concussion at one end, at the mildest end, to cases where symptoms may be more prolonged. And also in the case of multiple concussions, where people may go on to have longer-term symptoms and potentially progressive difficulties as well. We know, as per recent numbers, that in Ontario there's approximately 150,000 concussions per year, and this was based on data from 2008 to 2016. And the annual incidence is about 1153 per 100,000. And what we know is the majority of people that have a concussion make a full recovery. But there are a lot of concussions, and we also know that about 15% of this group do not make such a good recovery, and they may go on to have more prolonged symptoms beyond the sort of 1 to 3 month period where we expect things to recover. So we also know that there's a number of challenges in terms of there's been increased awareness of concussion certainly over the past many years, which is great, but there hasn't been any associated increase in funding. And so what this means is there's really limited assessment and really no multidisciplinary team-based treatment for individuals with prolonged symptoms under the OHIP covered system. What we've also learned is that there's a lot of inconsistent medical advice that is out there, and there are efforts that we'll probably hear about later this evening to try to remedy that. There's also unproven and sort of pricey treatments that we hear people trying. So understandably, individuals that are suffering from prolonged symptoms are often really frustrated and have a really difficult time trying to navigate the system and tend to be overwhelmed by promises of cures. So our goals at the Canadian Concussion Centre, about 5 years ago, it became evident there was a real lack of resource and education for these individuals. So what we were hoping to do was to educate on the current state of concussion treatment. And currently what that involves are management guidelines that were put out by the Ontario Neurotrauma Foundation. And the guidelines are very symptom-based, so they provide recommendations to healthcare providers as to how to address the most common symptoms that individuals may run into. We also wanted to communicate that there really is no magic bullet. There's not one thing that we know, despite some of the claims that are out there, that can cure prolonged symptoms. We also hope to bring people together that are suffering from prolonged symptoms to share their experiences, to provide some peer support, and also to provide some tools that may help individuals to cope better with the symptoms that they're experiencing. So back in 2014, in conjunction with members of the Cognitive Neurorehabilitation Sciences Lab at Toronto Rehab, we decided to put together an education and support workshop geared to individuals that are experiencing prolonged symptoms, and as well as their families and caregivers. So this is just a flyer, which I think is at the front as well, that provides some information on the workshop that we have been running. We've been running it ongoing since 2014, and for the past few years it's been myself and Dr. Apame Tarasi, who's a neurologist here at the Western, who has kindly co-facilitated with me. So to date, we have run 22. The workshop itself is a 2-night education and support workshop, and we've run it quarterly. To date, we've had about 500 people come through the workshop. We have videotaped and archived one of these that is on the Canadian Concussion Centre website, so that it's available for people who can't make it to the workshop. We've also looked at retention rates just in terms of how many people are actually coming back on night 2. It's been about 82%, and the feedback has generally been that people prefer the 2 nights. So what we do at the end of the workshop is we've been collecting just qualitative data and feedback from individuals that have come in to the workshop. And generally it has been pretty positive. And one of the most common things is we hear is that people say, I feel less alone. They're able to sort of, it may be the case that they've been very isolated. They're not aware that there are other people that have prolonged symptoms, and as I was saying, are often sort of frustrated with what they've received to date. What we do in the workshop is to really provide education around, basic education around concussion, as well as trying to educate on different tools and strategies that we think may be helpful and that are currently being researched as well, but that may actually target several of the more common symptoms that people experience, things like headache, sleep difficulties, psychological difficulties. Generally speaking, it's people that have had concussions or their loved ones that are coming in, but we've also had some healthcare practitioners as well that have come in, and we've gotten some good feedback from them in terms of them taking back tools and strategies to work with their clients. We've also shared our workshop with the Peel Halton ABI services, and they're now running something that is similar in their area. So in terms of future plans, we'd like to really try and make the workshops more accessible and hopefully in time expand the online content. We understand it can be difficult for people to get in, or they may not live in the GTA. So we're considering sort of presentations from experts on the different sort of more common symptoms that individuals have, things like sleep difficulty, headache, pain, mood issues, cognitive difficulties, and also incorporating presentations and feedback from patients themselves and their experiences. And I'm going to turn it over to Heather to talk about another recent addition to the education.
Yes, that's right. So my name's Heather. I'm an occupational therapist, and I'm going to be talking about the handbook that is being circulated tonight. I said I would take 2 minutes to speak, so I'm not sure exactly what I'm going to say, but I'm going to say it very quickly. I promise you that. The handbook was actually created by a student of mine, not this past summer, but the summer before that. And I have been editing and revising it ever since in collaboration with a team of experts, and that would include Dr. Tartaglia, Dr. Tatter, Dr. Ruttan, and others. The booklet can be divided into kind of 3 broad themes. The first is an acknowledgement that people do experience symptoms for a long time after having a concussion in many cases. And then there's a review of the types of symptoms people may experience, the degree of medical intervention which is available, and its effectiveness. The second section covers non-medical strategies which people can employ independently in order to best manage their symptoms and enhance overall quality of life. And the third section is a compendium of resources, and that includes websites, workshops, community organizations, phone apps, courses, and I actually believe there's even a book or 2. I do want to draw attention to one website here, which is Brave Comics. It's a website here, but Kanika, if I said your name right, has actually brought the published paper version, if people want to. I don't know, I hope you have more than one copy, but it is out in paper as well. And you'll also notice that every page of this handbook is covered by a watermark which says draft, and a banner loudly proclaims it as well on the second page. So this is still being revised. We are collecting feedback tonight from people. There are evaluation forms outside, and anyone who takes a handbook, we would gladly like to receive your feedback about the handbook. My email and Dr. Kodadadi's email is on the form, so you could scan and email that back to us, or you could drop it by Dr. Tartaglia's office, Dr. Tatter's office, or mail it in, or Dr. Rattan's office, presumably. And then that feedback will be incorporated as much as we can into the final version of the book, which is going to be very soon.